دار السلام ويهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to this episode of Gaza Massacre. I'm your host, Jamil Rashid. Okay, we've seen that we're coming up to the 20th day nearly of this massacre, this war on Gaza, this war on the Muslim Ummah, this killing of innocent civilians, children, women, this war that seems not to end, this war that the international community takes no notice of. But here at Huda TV, we're trying to keep you informed of what's going on and what's really the truth behind what we see on our screens. Today I have with me to go through this history of what's going on our screens Professor Abdul Wahab Bakr from Zigzag University, the professor in modern and Middle East history. Assalamu alaikum, Professor.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Professor, when we look at the problems in Gaza, the problems actually in Palestine itself, and the atrocities in Palestine, many of us have a very short memory. We see the killings presently, these murderous killings and massacre in front of us, but we forget history, we forget what's happened in the past. I'd like to open by asking you, is this something new, these kind of massacres we're seeing by this occupational terrorist force called Israel, or is this something that's only been done for the first time?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let me remind you that anything without history is nothing. And history is everything in the world. Of course, if anybody didn't know his history, he doesn't know his future. And unfortunately, in the Middle East or in the Arabs, always forget their history. The atrocities which are taking place in Gaza these days have their own history. And as far as we are concerned, we touched this matter in the 40s of the 20th century, when two murderers of the Israeli gangs came to Cairo and murdered Lord Moyne, the Middle East minister from Britain. Afterwards, they started to make some explosions in the area. So they exploded the King David Hotel in Jerusalem. And many British people were killed because it was the headquarters of the British troops in the Middle East. Let's pass through what happened afterwards when they killed all the women and men in Deir Yassin, where at that time they tried to show some sort of ruthless methods.
Which sort of year are we talking now?
That was 1948.
So still we're right at the beginning. Now, it's the reason I stopped you here is because some people believe there was not much in terms of killings before 48.
No, but there was.
There was. I see.
Yes, that's I talked about the King David explosion and the killing of Lord Moyne and Deir Yassin at that time. That's why the Arab countries, through the Arab League organization, sent their armies, including Egypt, to Palestine to save the Palestinians from the Israelis' massacres. So this is a very important point in our discussion. The Egyptian and the Arab troops, which went in May 1948, went to save and to rescue the Palestinians from the massacres the Israelis were committing. I wish to focus on this point because there was no any reason for that. The Palestinians at that time asked to be helped by the Arabs, and that's why the Arab committee sent the troops there. After this, the massacre of Deir Yassin, where they killed all the people of in this village, and to show their ruthless methods in killing, they used to open the trunks of the pregnant women and bring out the babies from inside to show to the people. This way of killing and this ruthless way of killing and shooting the people, slaying them, amputating their legs and hands, show the psychological means of psychological thing they do towards the Arabs. What I wish to focus on is that this is a psychological aspect in the Israelis towards the Arabs in order to implement some sort of horror, not only terror, in their thoughts, so they do not dare any time or in the future to face them.
So now we've come past, say, 48. Now we know that some of the crimes committed between 1950 and 70 were the most atrocious crimes. The UN sent many, made many resolutions, and these are Security Council resolutions were little at that time, but the General Assembly resolutions were many, condemning Israel, but to no effect. They kept on doing these killings. I mean, why was their killing so butcherous in terms of the international community knew what was going on, but they never stopped? What was the psychology? Why were they doing this?
Well, let me remind you of the cover and the protection they are enjoying from the United States. Mm-hmm. And if we talk about the resolutions given by the United Nations and the Security Council, it was not the only one which they refused this time or many years before. Remember the Resolution 242 mm-hmm. and the 338, mm-hmm. which aimed to give us a resolution to the problem as a whole. Mm-hmm. And they refused to do it because unless a resolution comes in their favor, they do not accept it. And since they are under the bias and the protection of the United States, they will not listen to any voice or to any advice to stop these killings. And since the United States has now some sort of full hand or some sort of sovereignty over the United Nations, every resolution will be drift out according to the wish of the Israel.
Okay, let's go back to some of the history now. Tell us, what other massacres took place in the late, say, 60s, coming up to 67, and around 70, when the time of the wars?
We talked about the King David, mm-hmm. and we talked about Deir Yassin. Mm-hmm. Afterwards, in 1956, they killed the Egyptian prisoners of war after the tripartite aggression that was in the passes, Metla Pass, mm-hmm. at that time, and nobody talked to them. In 1967, they killed the Egyptian prisoners of war at that time also. Let me go with you to Cana, when they killed the children in the Cana, where the United Nations place was there. Cana too also, Sabra and Shatila. So they have a very black and very red lists or record in killing and massacring people. But the thing which I wish to stress on is that the way they're killing, the modus operandi of the war is to show a very severe way of ruthless killing in order to put
it's a psychological war.
It's a psychological.
Even though it's brutal, they put psychology. Now, we've heard now in reports nowadays, coming from Gaza, that psychologists are saying the mark left on young children is something which is deeper than anything they've seen before. This kind of psychological war, is there any way out of this psychological war? Because it takes two sides. For example, they have a propaganda machine that's also doing a psychological war. But on the other side, we don't see the Arab or Muslim world using their propaganda to also do a psychological war, or to even help the youngsters.
Sir, let me say that for the second time that they wish to put horror and fear in the hearts of the people, of the Arabs, so that they dare not any time to face them or to ask them what they are doing. Unfortunately, many Arabs feel that, but I know that others, illa man rahma rabbi, are brave, and they face these massacres and these monsters. But what about the other ones? the hukam, the leaders, those who have the policy of the countries, these people feel that the Israelis are more stronger than anybody, and therefore they do not face them, or they do not dare do anything to them.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, but before we do, I've got one question for you, Professor, regarding the history that we've seen running all the way up to today. We're looking at 2009. The question is there going to be a dramatic change? I mean, has Israel really come up to the end now? Because this war, the big difference between this war, and our viewers all know truly well, the difference between this war and everything else they've done before is that this war is highlighted in the media like no other war. This war, everybody's seen what they're doing. The phosphorus bombs they're putting and burning our brothers and sisters, the babies that they're burning, the way they're killing indiscriminately 1.5 million people. It's not the same as before. Do you really think this is a turning point for them?
Well, if I have time before your break, I would wish to remind the audience that it's a war between a well-established state and a town. Gaza is not a country, is not a state, it's not a dawla. It's just a town. Yeah, the population is 1.5 million, but they are facing a military machine which has a power, military power, equal to all the power the Arab countries have, perhaps more. The other day, the news told us that the United States have sent 1,306 containers. The containers, I'm sorry, I thought they were filled with biscuit and cheese to the Palestinians, but they were filled with ammunition.
Jazakallah. We're going to come back in the second part and speak a bit about something you said there. You said well-established state. We're going to speak briefly about really how they became a state, even though we know they came and overthrew people. They came and basically they took over a piece of land and they made themselves into a state. We're going to have a look at this briefly, and also we're going to be looking at some of our brothers and sisters in Cairo getting some medical treatment, some of the wounded from Gaza. That's after this break on Gaza Massacre. Please do stay with us.
Brothers and sisters, to increase your iman.
خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا. Learning how to recite the Quran properly, learning the meaning of what we recite, including the ahkam from the verses which we recite, trying to implement what we learn in our daily life. Would listen to the participants and the guests. We'll take your phone calls. We're going to recite live. We'll listen to your recitation and we'll correct it according to the rules and regulations which we'll state in each episode. Now your dream will come true.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm with you, Jamil Rashid, on this episode of Gaza Massacre. Now, what we did, we went to a local hospital here in Cairo to see some of those wounded from Gaza. They're coming into Egypt now, and their treatment. We went there with our cameras and we spoke to some of our brothers and sisters. Watch the clip now.
بالنسبة له والله صواريخ من صواريخ الاحتلال الإسرائيلي.
Well, my son was hit by incoming rocket from the Israeli forces. He was helping in presenting aid for the wounded. He is 15 years old. While he was helping, the Israeli Air Forces dropped a bomb on the civilians, and he was among them at the time. Most of the casualties are civilians. There is a blockade and one cannot get the basic necessity of life. We are really disappointed. We lost our children, our relatives, and our people, and all of us are suffering. This is like a slow death. It is genocide. We cannot say about that. All praises for Allah, and we ask Allah to protect us against this aggression, and may He have mercy upon us, and He is our protector, and He is sufficient for us.
والحمد لله على كل حال. نشكر الله عز وجل وإن شاء الله ربنا يقوي كل بني آدم مسلم.
They are fighting us and they are hitting us. As for Hamas, they are defending us. Israel is hitting our people from their base called Natsarim in the desert. Actually, Israel until now has not been able to control the resistance force. There are encounters between the Israelis and Hamas, and all praise for Allah. Hamas has been able to resist them, and inshallah, they will keep on defending us. Every day, approximately 100 people die, most of them civilians in their homes.
What's happened to you?
Myself and a friend were in the Zaytun district, standing in one of the streets. My phone was off. I turned it on, and as soon as I did, a bomb was dropped on us. I lost consciousness, and when I awoke, I found myself here in Egypt.
Okay, now there you just saw the clip there of some of the Huda TV staff going to see the casualties there in the hospital in Egypt. It's a very sorrowful situation. Many of them are amputees, unfortunately. Many of them, they're with their families, and only one member of the family out of 10 is alive and well. Just a note, if you've got any views about what you see on this program of Gaza Massacre or any of the other episodes on Gaza Massacre, or even wide as enough as anything you see on Huda TV, please send an email to feedback@huda.tv. Professor, there we see the horrific scenes, killing indiscriminately, like you said, children being maimed, killed.
It's a shame on their part.
It's a shame on their part, but it's also a shame on even our parts sometimes, because we forget like the atrocities that happened before.
Yeah.
We're very quick at forgetting. And the second thing is that we give some legitimacy to Israel. And the way I say this, and this is my question to you, Israel is not a state. Israel is an occupying force on Palestinian Arab Muslim land. And we want to make this clear. The international community may make them into a state, but the truth is they're not. How did they come about making themselves into a state?
Well, as you know, they say that Palestine is the Ard al-Mi'ad, which they were promised.
Their promised land, yes.
The promised land.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Jewish conference was held at Basel by Theodor Herzl in 1896, they agreed, according to the meeting or to the conference, to start some sort of migration in Palestine. Unfortunately, when the First World War took place, Britain gave a declaration at that time in 1917 to allow the Jews, or the Jews,
yes,
to emigrate to the area by the utmost help they can do to them.
This is the Balfour Treaty we're speaking about.
The Balfour Treaty declaration. Unfortunately, the Britain won the war at that time, and it was given what we can call it mandate. The mandate, it became a mandatory state on Palestine, and by means of this way, they gave the cat the meat. It's a proverb. I mean to say that they were allowed to implement this declaration by force. Therefore, they opened the door for the Jews to emigrate in massive numbers to Palestine, while suppressing the Palestinians from stopping that. Therefore, many intifadats, or many rising ups, took place at that time on the part of the Arabs against this sort of immigration. But unfortunately, the Arabs were unarmed. The British were biased to the Israelis, to the Jews, and therefore they started to make some sort of settlements in the area, well armed, well equipped. The immigration took place from Poland, Russia, England, America, any place, and they began to be a power ready to attack the Arabs. According to their system in establishing their country, they formed some sort of military gangs or terror gangs to attack the Arabs in their places and force them to evacuate their countries, creating the problem of the refugees. When the mandate was over in May, 15th of May 1948, they announced or they promulgated their country, and the United States and Russia and many other European countries accepted their agreed to the creation of this country. And that's how the state of Israel began to be established in the country. But it was thought at that time that the Israeli state in the area was created for the people to live, but they are here to kill.
And not just kill, they're there. And I always ask my guests this question, and I'm going to ask you the same question regarding Israel. We call Israel the terrorists, but they're not the ones who are making the bombs that are dropping on our brothers and sisters. And from the early onset, America has been aiding Israel. Can we not put them in the same category here? Both of them are terrorists, really?
It goes without saying that I can say that in this respect that if I was a judge, I will put the Americans or America in jail before the Israelis, because they are responsible for this.
And finishing off today, a final note from you, Professor, regarding history as general. I mean, we really just highlighted on some of the issues. How important is it for our viewers there, for all the Muslims in the world and the Arabs and even the humanitarian good people of the world, of every country, to learn the right history and to spread it? Because see, people say, what can we do? We can do dua, we can give sadaqah, but is there more we can do? One isn't it to propagate the truth, what's going on?
Well, first of all, I would advise them to forget any bona fides towards the Americans. They are the enemy. To forget any good relations with the Israelis. They do not understand anything but power. To strengthen themselves, to unite in face of this danger, which will not stop unless it is eradicated.
Okay, Professor Abdul Wahab Baka, Jazakallah khair for being with us on Gaza Massacre. This episode of Gaza Massacre, we just spoke about the history of what's going on and what's happened in this conflict. But this is not a new conflict, as we found out today. It's something the Israelis, the terrorists, have been fighting the Muslims for centuries, from the early century. And unfortunately, it's a problem for us Muslims because, well, like the Professor said, we've got a short memory. We keep forgetting the massacres that happened. So this is our finishing advice for all of us today, is to learn your history, to look up at what's been going on in the last 100 years, to really understand that this is not a conflict that started 10, 20, 30 years ago. It was planned for over 100 years. I leave you with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yeah.